Hello and good morning friends, welcome to CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friend, in this session of ours today we are going to discuss on managerial tools for decision making, and under this very topic we are going to discuss on data analysis with the Excel. And for this we have again with us in our studios Dr. Ropi Valli. He is professor in IIFT. So I would like to welcome our guest Dr. Ropi Valli and would like him to explain us in detail what is the data analysis with the Excel, how data analysis could be done with the help of Excel.
Thank you, Ms. Getika. Today, this session, which will be followed by another session tomorrow, we are going to look at some, easily accessible tools to analyze decision-making situations. Because as you know, at the heart of any organizational effectiveness and say successful performance is good decision making by its managers. People at different levels of the organization need to take decisions of various say influence on the prospect of the organization. So it is quite important that people who are working in the organizations or who are the prospects to get into organizations, new recruits, all of them need to have the skill set and the kind of awareness about the tools which can help them take good, effective and efficient decisions. So there's a lot of learning that happens in due course of time as people confront various decision making situations that comes through the experience. This session basically we are trying to develop some basic grounding skills which are mandatory for any kind of person working in an organization to go about doing systematic decision making. Let us look at the process. Can we have the slide? Yeah. So first thing that one needs to really consider is that that any process of data analysis to take a good decision or arrive at an optimum decision, one has to really contemplate the whole process much earlier than before the decision is taken, because one gets time to really look into all pros and cons of the decision, and that helps to sort out issues before finally a decision is taken. And it is always good and prudent to start with a plan and know about the decision situation, what are the various variables which affect the decision space, and think about getting the right data for the analysis part, because if you don't have the right data with you or you have incomplete data, probably you are not going to do justice to the whole decision making process. So it is quite important that we lay our hands on the right kind of data, capture it. Is always good to capture it from the source and to have the least corruption in the data. So once the data is actually acquired, then one can move further in preparation of the data and apply the tools. So again, talking about say decision situations and capturing the data, it is important that the organizations should have say processes which are able to capture the data. A lot of data nowadays, as you may have seen in say any retail outlet, they capture the data at the point of purchase through scanners, and in the organizations which are basically managing large supply chains, there are elaborate ERP systems which help organizations to capture data at the point of all points of transaction. So that is how data is captured. But imagine a company which is selling gas, or which is selling oil, stuff like that. So the important thing is that how do we really capture that data in that particular case. So there's a lot of instrumentation framework that is actually required in such cases to capture data. In terms of how much pressure is there in say various cylinders, what is the kind of temperature that is there in the room. So all this is normally done through instrumentation framework. You have various gadgets and equipment lying in various rooms which capture that kind of a data. So all this data somehow is captured in a database, and then further work can be done on top of that. So Once we have the data, it is important that we should be able to code the data. If we are not coding the data, it would be actually quite messy. We will not be able to align the data, align the entities, align the events. So it is important that the data is codified properly, data is captured or entered as the case may be. And then the most important process is cleaning of the data, because many a times we don't have data which is coming from internal sources, which is fine, but if it comes from external sources, it may be of different, say, formats, it may be incomplete, it may have, say, different terms used to really decipher something. So it is important that we clean the data, bring it in sync with the overall data format. Then analysis becomes quite easier. So having data in place, the next stage is that we analyze the data, and followed by interpretation of the data, which is the heart of the whole decision making, where you have the data, graphs, visuals, tables. So one needs to interpret that whole set of information which is lying in front of the decision maker, and then reflect at the end. Quite important for a good learner, and sustainable learning, what we call, is that we should really reflect what we have really learned in the process. How do we really improvise this process of decision making for the future? What are the conclusions that we draw from this whole process, whole analysis? What are our recommendations? What are the limitations of our analysis? It is not always possible that we have a complete knowledge of things, or we are supposed to take decisions for all the relevant situations that we confront. But important thing is that we should know of the limitations what we have in terms of capacity, in terms of our role, responsibility, accountability. So that has to be understood and is part of the whole decision making process. So first thing that we discussed was, why should we really plan? It is to really make sure that the questions and your data collection instruments will get the information you want. It's quite important, because if you ask a wrong question, you will get a wrong answer. So it is important for the kind of data you require for your, say, decision situation. You should ask the right questions, or you should have the right, say, template to capture the information or the inputs from the subject. So subject can be a retailer, subject can be a customer, subject can be a supplier, subject can be the investor, it can be anybody. So important thing is questions or the templates to capture data have to be appropriate, have to be asked in the right format, so that you get the right information in to the system. And your data collection instrument has to be easier. The usability is quite important in this case. That means you can have a data capturing instrument which can be quite elaborate, comprehensive, but it is quite possible the people who input data into your instrument may not be really comfortable with that. So it is important that you actually have an easy to use instrument, which is understood by the respondent, by the user, by the people who punch data into the template or the data form. So that has to be taken care of. Otherwise, you may probably not get the complete information, right information, or sometimes people try to evade questions because they are not comfortable with giving the answers to such questions, because they are not able to understand it. So there's an apprehension which basically lies under this whole process. So one has to get over those hitches in the data capturing process. So usability has to be taken care of. So that is first thing that we have to really understand. Now second thing is that to align your desired repo with the results of analysis and interpretation. That means that you have to align the goals of your analysis with the analysis and the interpretation, because when you are having a data and you are trying to analyze it, you can analyze the data from different dimensions, you can take it to any level or any kind of scope, but the important thing is what are your goals. So to be an efficient decision maker, it is quite important that you focus on the goals, and in the perspective of those goals you try to analyze and interpret the data. And that is basically what we call as, you have to go deeper into the situation rather than spreading too much, because they offset each other. the deeper analysis is at the cost of a wider say scope. So it is always good for a decision maker to really limit the spirit of the analysis and be a bit deeper, because that throws out more interesting issues. Normally what we are talking, the context is middle level, junior level managerial situations. So as this session is dedicated to that kind of say skill set, so that is why I'm saying so. But of course, if you are looking at the strategic decisions which have a lot of qualitative say kind of context, it may be relevant to really spread the space of consideration much wider, because there could be possibly outer linkages with your current situation. So one has to really consider that if such a situation arises or such a case is considered. So, and another thing that is to be understood in the context of the why we plan is to improve the reliability. That means whatever measures you are using to capture data, they have to be standard, they have to be consistent, they have to be reliable. The reason being that if we have data capturing say mechanism in an organization, so normally the data has a set format, there are controls in the input data or the form, so normally it comes in a particular standard form. But when we try to do data capturing outside the organization, take feedback from the customers, take feedback from the suppliers, and we may not have an extended ERP system to capture that kind of a data. So whatever questions we are asking, it is quite important that we have a consistency in asking those questions. Consistency in the sense that is, if we ask the same question to a person multiple times, we should probably get the same answer. Otherwise, there is issue with the reliability of capturing data. Meaning thereby, if I ask somebody, what is your opinion about the product we have just launched in the market, how do we really rate it in terms of the quality of its durability? So the question I'm asking, the ingredients of my questions have to be very clear, so that there is no kind of ambiguity with the respondent to answer such questions. Or I'm asking feedback from my retailers, I'm asking say some kind of information from my supplier. So because there's a lot of data nowadays which is actually lying outside the organization because of the proliferation of web, social media, etc. So definitely there's a lot of scope for capturing a lot of data, using it for our internal purposes along with our internal data sources to do good decision making and improve our performance. So the next thing that we discussed was the ingredients of the plan. Is like if we want to have a plan, what should be the ingredients of the plan? The first thing that we need to really look at is the purpose of the evaluation. Why are we analyzing the data? What is the purpose? Is it only for the current decision situation, the current goals we are having, or we want to really take it to say future course of action? Because many times we throw a lot of issues in the decision making process which are not answered at that point of time, but they remain questions for further decision making. So it is many times possible that we may not just try to analyze a particular situation for the purpose of creating a deliverable in that particular say decision situation. It is quite possible that we may take a decision, but we may also raise issues which could be decision situations for other people in the organization, for other people outside the organization, or for us in the future. So one has to really consider that. That means we don't have to be narrow-minded about the decision situation. So our evaluation purpose can be much more than just arriving at a conclusion in the current situation. It can be much more than that. So then of course the questions in the plan are important. They have to be concise, clear, and focused on the objectives that we just said. And as we discussed, that what we hope to learn from the questions. And the important thing is that what is the analysis technique we are going to use to analyze the situation, because there could be elaborate technical methodologies to apply in a particular case. Important thing, one has to look at the capacity of the individual and to be honest about the whole process of analysis and taking a particular decision, because many times I have seen in the process of interface with the industry that there are a lot of tools which are available, and many times the employees are not really comfortable with those tools because the organizations want them to use those particular tools and applications. They somehow apply those applications, and there are a lot of things that remain, unsolved or undecided in that whole framework, and people tend to take decisions because that is kind of a mandatory, or that is kind of a norm, or sometimes a compliance, social compliance issue that we are also using an application in the organization. But it is always better to really have an application being used in a decision situation which you really know very well, and whatever reports it generates, you understand what those different parameters mean in that. So whatever technique is being used, one, you should really understand that it should be easy to use, you should be comfortable with that. Second important thing is it should be relevant to the situation, because there are many times some managers they know a particular application or a tool and they simply apply given some kind of a data, but that analytical tool may not be really relevant to that kind of a situation, because that sometimes can compromise good information. Let us say you have a continuous stream of data about let us say the income of the people. Now you can categorize this data into low income, high income and middle income group, and try to do some kind of juggling and analysis on top of that. But important thing is it would be always good to, and you can get more information of course if you work on the continuous stream of data rather than the categories, because when we divide into categories, there's a lot of data, a lot of information which gets absorbed into the categories. Though it helps us to really understand the typology of the whole income levels in the subject, but if we have to do some deeper analysis, it is always good to look at more granular level of information. So that is important to really see. And how data will be presented, because finally the essence of whole analysis and using applications, tools is actually decision making, and it has to be presented to somebody. That means if you analyze some data, bring out a report, and that report is not understood by the users. Let us say a middle level manager is trying to present some business plan or some new proposition to the steering committee or board of management. If those guys are not able to understand your charts or reports or the alphas and betas that you have presented to them, or there's no point. In fact, you will be rather confusing them rather than helping them to really learn your perspective. So it is important that the way your analysis is presented to the user, it has to be quite understandable, easy, and should be appreciated by the audience. So all analysis followed by the kind of report that you generate from any kind of analysis has to be done in the perspective of the user, who would be actually consuming this report and output. And of course, if you are yourself the decision maker, you don't take this report further, then whatever you do with the data, as long as you can really understand it, it is fine. But many times we see that even we are not able to understand our own reports which we had generated maybe some year before, because many times we try to consume our earlier analysis and data analytical reports which are done in the historical past. So it is important that you make it understandable, document it, put proper remarks in the report, so that at any point of time later on, you or anybody else wants to really understand what you have done, and what all method has been used, how it has been used, what were the assumptions. All this has to be taken care of when you are analyzing data. So next important thing is whatever data you have is important that you understand the types of data. What is basically the nature of data? What are the attributes of this data? Because data has to actually speak. It has to talk, and you have to really interact with the data. So it is quite important you understand the language of the data. So the important thing is that data can be quantitative and or it can be qualitative. So if it is quantitative, you can have a set of techniques which can be applied on top of that. But if it is qualitative, you probably have to resort to some other kind of tools. So the skill set required to analyze quantitative data, maybe probably not same which you can apply into the qualitative data. And just for your understanding, nowadays there are specialists who are exclusively focused on the quantitative data or the qualitative data. So if somebody wants to groom himself or herself into the analytical space, so this may be kind of a decision that comes in terms of the career course, that whether we want to move on to the qualitative data analysis or the quantitative data analysis, because these are much bigger streams in itself. So and have quite comprehensive frameworks to handle in these cases. But of course, initially in say any kind of a program, any kind of a degree program or any kind of a training program, normally both kinds of say skills are being imparted at the basic level, but later on there's a clear-cut division between quantitative analysis or qualitative analysis. So and the ways to handle it, and it also needs a kind of a temperament and your belief in the kind of analysis you are doing. If you believe in a qualitative data analysis approach and are satisfied with that, is always good to really follow that. And if you believe in quantitative data approach, so one can really follow that. This I am saying in terms of helping people sometimes to really choose a career between qualitative and quantitative, because there's no point coming with an analytical output and trying to take a decision based on that which you don't believe yourself. Because I've seen a lot of people who believe in qualitative data analysis and they apply quantitative data analysis, though they have taken a decision based on the analysis or they have brought some say kind of a report, but somehow they are not really satisfied internally in the heart of hearts. So it is quite important that you really understand what is your temperament, what is your approach, and what you really believe in, and you can really specialize in that. And regarding data sources, is important that the data has to be captured at the relevant time. As long as you are capturing data inside the organization, which is actually scheduled data, capturing method, or it is automated method, that means invoices are generated, orders are given, some transaction happens, people move items from operations to the dock to the customers, all these things keep on happening and data gets automatically captured. But if you have to capture data outside, it really matters a lot, and a lot of things have to be really considered. Let us say you are capturing data from a social network, let's say from Twitter, or you're from Facebook, or say some internet platform forum where people are talking about our products. You need to really look at the authenticity of the data. You need to look at the timing of the data, because in social networks you will realize that the mood of the people actually varies across events, across times, across geographies. So a lot of other qualitative things have to be really taken care of while you are capturing the data. And if you are interacting with people, let us say group discussions, focus group discussions, or questions, or interviews, that is a different story. So again, you have to really see how do you really capture the right kind of data, how do you ask them questions, what is the mood of the person, is this the right person to give me the right data, has the sampling been done properly, are they the representative of the population we are really interested in. So I will give an example. Let us say we want to get feedback from one of our distributors or from the distributors about our say new incentive scheme as a marketing department or a sales department we have offered. So we want some feedback from the distributors. Now we ask our sales people to get the feedback from the distributors. Now imagine a situation, there is some problem in a particular state which could be of any nature, and there is a general panic in the place. Now your guy goes and he asks for the feedback, or that guy is having some kind of an internal frustration or domestic frustration, and at that time if you are not able to really understand that, you have to really see the mood of the person to really give you the right and sincere feedback. So these are very important things to consider when we are trying to get information from somebody. Similarly, I have seen many times people try to collect data at the airports about the say various issues of aviation and airlines, etc. A lot of companies who try to get data. Now they ask the passengers who have just few minutes left to really do the boarding. It is not really sensible to really get data at that point of time. You have better get hold of some passenger who is quite relaxed, who has a lot of time to really board the plane, and then you can ask feedback. Or people have left who have come from say returned from an place and are left to the airport, and at that point of time, and they are quite comfortable and they give you the permission to take the data, then you can actually ask for the information. And that is what I'm saying, that you have to be, the situation has to be apt for the information capture. And now regarding analysis, there are various techniques, but let me tell you, statistics is quite intertwined with any kind of analysis that you do, because the actual amount of information in any kind of say data is the variability, and statistics is the tool to really capture that variability. So there's always interesting to really have the skill of statistics if somebody wants to really improve the decision making skills. It helps. You need not to be a very master class statistician, but at least understanding some basic skills would always help to analyze data better, get more information from the data you have, and also help develop more suitable and authentic reports which can be trusted by your audience. So it is important, and you will have more confidence in what you are actually doing, because statistics has a lot of tools, a lot of methodologies, a lot of tests to really address various situations of say data analysis. And another important thing is that if we want to, as I said in the earlier stages, that in the process we have to learn from the process of analysis, and we should be able to replicate our experiences in the future situations, and we should be able to help others also. So it is important at the end of the day, if we take a decision based on some data, whatever methodology or technique we use, we have to really see whether this learning can be taken to other places. Let us say in Delhi, people may have confronted n number of situations when this metro project was executed in Delhi. Now let us say we want to take this project to another say metro city, let us say in any city, take Ahmedabad, take or say Madras. Now whatever say kind of situations, whatever kind of decisions were taken over here, can this learning be taken over there? So possibly we may have to adjust for the context, some cultural things or whatever, but the important thing is the decision making has not to be seen in the isolation of that particular event only. It has to be seen in the context of the learning experiences, and how can we take it to the other situations in terms of the time, in terms of the place, in terms of the individuals, in terms of the groups. So all this has to be really considered. So now we come to the main part of this whole session, is how do we use software for the data analysis. So we will do some basic practical examples and help you understand how do we use the most easiest and the accessible tool that is available to us, which we call MS Excel. Microsoft Excel is one of the most earliest tools. Earlier days we used to call a product called Lotus 123, which was very common, and subsequently Microsoft got this Excel product in the marketplace, which has gone through various revisions and versions. So the current product, Office 10 and Office 13, you have really a very robust spreadsheet application which can help us a lot in most of our decision making situations. So I think a lot of people are really learning nowadays much. The number of people who are now trying to understand and master the craft of analytics, and which includes of course learning Excel, has grown tremendously in last many years, because there are a lot of resources available on the internet which can help any individual at home to access a lot of learning material, to know the various techniques. You need not to really have the books. You can actually access YouTube videos or say learning resources. So one can learn on his or her own. So but thing is, today what I'm trying to give you a starter, a taste of what basically it looks like, and help you to motivate yourself that this could be a very interesting area to really develop your skills and art of doing analysis with the help of the software. So some tools that I am trying to list over here, which are quite common and prevalent, and the types of tools. One is the Excel is a spreadsheet tool. Then we have statistical tools like SPSS, Minitab, SAS, and there are some open source tools which is called like R. You can use a number of tools. Then we have simulation tools. Simulation tools are helpful to really improvise the process of decision making by understanding the amount of risk in a particular situation and get some estimation about the amount of risk that is involved. So we will possibly do a simulation exercise today, or if we don't get it time, then we will do it tomorrow session. So we will actually do apply simulation methodology, but we'll probably use Excel. But there are other say branded application tools which are available in the market to conduct simulation. For example, there's a product from Palisade which is called At Risk. There's another product from Oracle which is called Crystal Ball. So these tools are used to simulate the decision making situation. Then we have optimizing tools. Again, in the Excel we have an optimization tool which is one of the most basic tools that you can actually use, and apart from that there are more powerful advanced tools to handle optimization in issues of decision making, and which is quite a common situation in most of the organizations, particularly the operations area, transportation area, inventory management. People have to really do a lot of optimization decision making. And then what is really getting more popular nowadays is the data mining tools. They help us to really dig into huge mines of data and trying to find something which is unobvious, some patterns which are just germinating. Because what is interesting is many of the times that we are able to see at issues which are becoming quite obvious, which are quite big. Is quite easier to see an elephant rather than a needle in the haystack. So data mining is about that needle part. If you are able to see something which is germinating, a new pattern which is getting which is getting into a shape kind of a thing, then you can actually possibly identify a new opportunity, a new threat to your organization, new behavior that is emerging in terms of the customers. So that is why the data mining is quite helpful to really understand and apply. And then BI tools like business objects from what is this company called SAP. You have BI tools from a lot of other bigger companies. They are quite interesting, are very easy to use, need maybe some time to really understand how to apply this. But if you have a data warehouse or you have bigger databases and you have a lot of information lying under that particular data, and BI are one of the most easiest and most articulate tools to understand information from the data. So quite useful way to really analyze situation using BI tools. Of course there is some cost to it to purchase a BI tool, but trust me, there are probably a lot of openware or freeware products which may not have that kind of capability or robustness, but they somehow serve the purpose, or at least one could start with such tools. And you may have really seen a lot of online say platforms and service providers provide complementary BI tools along with the kind of services they provide. Google has a BI tool which comes along with the kind of data they provide, so it is a kind of a facility for a lot of people to investigate data which is lying online from the Google side. Similarly, there are other providers as well who provide such kind of tools where you can actually visualize data through graphs, and you can overlay variables one upon each other. And the moment you see some kind of a change by overlaying a variable, that variable is actually changing the behavior of other variables. That is the essence of the whole technique. But the way it does it, the way you understand this whole thing is quite interesting and could be very useful. Another thing that is getting very common is the network data analysis, which has become more popular because of the networks that have been, networks and their data, which has been possible to access because of the platforms, social networks, network-based platforms, which are getting proliferated. Say Facebook, say Twitter, say MySpace earlier, and LinkedIn networks. You have all these kind of networks. There's a lot of data over there, and one would like to see how we could really influence people by using such networks, who are the important people in this network, how the information is actually spreading across these networks. So all this space and the kind of techniques that are used is getting very interesting, and a lot of people are trying to develop skills in that, and a lot of research is going on in this particular area, and of course there are software tools for that. So the tools, let me give you some tools like Node Excel, PAJEK, PAJEK, and Gephi. These are some of the tools which are quite interesting for the network data analysis, particularly is done in the context of the social networks. So they throw a lot of information, and people who are into viral marketing, word of mouth marketing, they actually could be quite interested in such kind of an analysis, or people who want to analyze the trade networks, or any kind of network behavior you want to see among bigger groups, larger groups. These are the kind of tools that could be quite helpful. And of course there are the list is endless, but thing is that we will now start working on this product that we said is MS Excel. How do we really model with the help of the Excel? We use, first thing before we move on to the actual hands-on exercise, is that we use separate worksheets for different tasks. So what it means is that if we now go back here and look at this thing, can we have the sheet slide? Oh, yeah. So if we look at this, the whole stuff in front of you is called a workbook. Each file that you open is actually a workbook from the Excel. Within this workbook, we have different worksheets: worksheet 1, worksheet 2, worksheet 3. You can increase the number of worksheets, you can rename them, you can do anything you want. So each worksheet is nothing but a table. So each worksheet is a table, and meaning thereby that in the database language, that is here. So in the database language, what it means is that each worksheet should be treated like a table. It should not be a messy stuff. See, normally what we do, if we have to analyze some situation, we put everything into one worksheet, and then we are not able to really, we may take a decision, we may have an analytical report on one side of that particular sheet, but that is not the professional way of doing it. The best way is to really use each worksheet separately for a separate exercise. Have one sheet exclusively, dedicated for the data capture. Have one worksheet for one kind of scenario. Have another worksheet for another kind of scenario. Because what happens is later on, if you go into the advanced modeling techniques, this would actually, one would really suffer if you do everything on one worksheet. So I hope you will understand as we really move on. And another thing is never hard code. This is the basic principle of using Excel. That means if we can use a formula, we can use a reference. We should not actually use a hard code. I will explain it when I move to the Excel. And make data presentable, easy to understand. I talked about it. Use mathematical thinking approach. So we will discuss about it. And keep refining models for better predictability. Fact of the matter is that any model is never perfect. So you have to really learn from it. You have to match it with the actual, happening of the event, actual, turnout of the events with what you really predicted, and possibly you need to really refine it. So it's a case of heuristics. That means you developed a model, you applied it, you got some output, there was some kind of a variance with the actual situation. You can actually refine the model, and later on, in the next situation, your model is much better than what it was earlier. So that is what we are talking about. So now we will move on to the Excel, and let us see what we can do with this. So the first thing that I was talking about is that each worksheet is a table, and has to be respected like that. So otherwise things will become messy. So let us do the first thing. I was talking about the references. Let us say we have a company who has just 3 figures. So I can just increase the size of this font, and I hope then you will understand it. Yeah. So what we can do is, let us say there's this ABC company. So yeah, just a minute. ABC Limited. Now let us say it has sales quantity. Let us say last month average is 1,000. let us say unit of is say they are units. So it has sold in the last month 1000 units. Let us say price per unit is let us say $10, and let us say variable cost per unit, let us say it is $7, and sorry, here it is. Now thing is, we can actually calculate say let us say the profit over here, or we can actually model this thing in a separate worksheet. Now we can simply calculate by just looking at the figures. The total gross profit is $3,000, price minus variable cost multiplied by the sales quantity. But what I mean by referencing is that the first sheet was used to capture the data. So I will name it. I will say rename and say this is data, sorry. And the next one here we will say we will calculate ABC Limited. Here I have now the profit figure. So profit figure in this case is how much is, I will use the reference. So when I use the reference, I will use is equal to, sorry, first let me make it a bit bigger here. So we have data and we have profit here. So I say profit is equal to, and then go to sheet number 1, click on this, and then I say multiplied by price minus cost, like this, and I push an enter. So the moment I push an enter, I got my gross profit over here. Now in fact what I have done is I use a formula here. I have linked two worksheets, that is table 1 is linked to the table 2. So if you want to see the formula, I put your formula like this. So you can see this is the formula. So this is the original data, this is the formula. So that means I have taken all data from the sheet number 1 where I have captured the data. In the sheet number 2, I actually build the model, equation I mean, and have captured the data using referencing. So if I would have simply written over here 3000, because it was easy for me to really calculate it. That is called hard coding, and hard coding has to be avoided at any cost in Excel if you are using Excel for the decision making analysis. This is quite important and the basic rule of using Excel. Now thing is, let us say we want to analyze this simple situation. So I will say sheet number 2, I will say analysis. So I put sheet number 2 as analysis, sheet number 1 as the data. Now I want to find out what would be my profit if my sales quantity would change. Let us say that if the sales quantity would vary between, let us say 800 to 1200. It could be 900, it could be 1000, it could be 1100, it could be 1200. So, or it could be 850. Now I want to really see in the slabs of 50 from 800 to 1200, what would be my corresponding profit. One way of doing it is that I can actually do one thing. I can put different figures over here. You know, I can actually say 800, 850, and then apply a formula on top of that. Now I can do that, and let us say I do like this. Okay, so I put all the demand figures. So these are demand figures. These are demand figures in units. Okay, now I can say corresponding profit. Corresponding profit. So what I do is I will actually do one thing. I will do this, click here, multiplied by, go here, and and brackets, this minus this, here it is, and here it is. So I have actually used a formula now. I have taken this 800 from here, A5, Rest of the 2 data points I have taken from sheet number 1. So this helps me to capture the corresponding profit for this demand. Now I can actually copy it down. It will give me, the profit for all the data points. But I have to take care, I have to actually freeze. I have to freeze what happens is just a minute. There is some bigger gadbad. Sorry, it got messed up. Let me make it a bit. Just give me a second. So I will quickly make it. I will say sales units. Price, variable cost. So we are saying this is 1000, this is 10, this is 7, and in the sheet number 2 we say this is now I have demand, and if we have from 800, this is 850, so we can actually we have like this. And then I said that to calculate the profit, corresponding profit, we can actually this multiplied by price minus cost. This is what I said, and then you can actually have a corresponding calculation for all. You can drag it down and get for everything, and that becomes quite messy. Now in this case, if you see, there is only we have to use a formula for each one and can actually calculate. But you can use a different tool which is available in the Excel sensitivity analysis tool, which is much better and easier. You don't have to really do much of this headache for yourself. So what we can do is, we can actually take this formula, we can delete it, we can write the profit over here by simply going to the sheet 1, multiplying it by this minus this, B3 minus B4, here it is. So this figure is basically the profit figure. We have actually got this figure from the sheet number 1. These are the various points over which we want to really find out what is their corresponding profit for us. So what we can do is, we can simply select all this particular range, go to a tool over here in the data, we click data, and then we have this tool called what if analysis over here, which is in the data tab, and here is something called data table. If we click this data table, you will have a pop-up stuff like this. What you do here is click on the column input cell, go to the sheet number 1 and click on the sales price and say OK. Just let me just give me a second. Here. Yes. So here I was. You select this entire area, go to the data table, go to the what if analysis, come here, column input and click. So what happens is that you actually refer one cell and you get this entire output. You don't have to actually feed any kind of a formula, and it is actually available to you. Now to make it for two variables, because in the first case what we did is we tried to analyze the data when we changed one variable, that is sales demand in the number of units. Now in this case, let me do for the sake of convenience for your people, that if I change two variables, let us change price and variable cost simultaneously and see what would be the corresponding profit for that. So for convenience, let me get entire thing over here. So if we put a profit over here, let us say sales units multiplied by this minus this. So, oh sorry, we have to do like this. So here we are. So we have actually 3000 as a gross profit. Now what I am saying is that if we have price, let us say price is 10 here. If we change the price from 850 to 9 and so on, let us say we have around say 10, 15 price points. So these are our price points. And similarly, let us have various variable cost figures. Let us say from 650 and so on. Let us take it to, let us say 950. So we have different variable cost figures, we have different price points. Now what would be the corresponding profit for that? So the way to apply this tool is quite interesting. Look here, we can actually select this entire area. So we select this entire area like this, like this. We go to the what if analysis tool, we go to the data table, and what we do is, gentlemen, is that in the row input we put 10. In the row input you have to actually input the variable in the model which refers the horizontal column, that is horizontal row, sorry. So horizontal row represents the figures here, they represent our price. So I will click on 10. In the vertical column input, it represents the cost, that means 650, 7. So I will click on 7 and I press OK. Here we got all the values for the gross profit given different price points and given different variable cost points. So how does it actually work? That is, we have to really look at. So if I go back into the formulas, trace precedents, you can see that that what we have done is we build an equation based on these three variables which we see here, that is sales units, price and variable cost. So this one is profit. Now we keep this profit in the corner cell, and then whatever analysis we want to do with the two variables, that means here this is price and here it is variable cost. Then we can simply punch in the numbers. If it is in the slabs, you can simply drag it and then select this entire area, go to the data table over here as I showed you, and then in that what we have to do is there are two things that we can put in. One is a row input, other is the column input. Now row input should be corresponding to the horizontal figures. That means when price would be 8 and cost would be 6, the corresponding gross profit would be 2000. That is how it really works. Now as you see, all this is okay, fine, as long as you have just two variables and you have discrete intervals to really handle. But the real situation is something really different. Most of the time we don't have just two variables to really manipulate. We may have more than two variables. If we have, let us say, 20 variables, 7 variables, then you can't actually use data table. So what we need to do is another tool in Excel which is called a scenario manager, which helps us to analyze data with up to 32 variables. But the issue with using scenario manager is that you have to actually punch in data every time you want to really create a new scenario. Let us say in this particular case, if we want to do that, let me just remove these figures. I keep it here, doesn't matter. So I go to the what if analysis tool. What happened is, sorry. So what if analysis, there is some problem over here. Access the access toolbar. I think it's over. How much time do we have?
We have some few minutes left with
Few
us.
minutes left. Okay. Okay. So I can quickly create a single scenario and we can actually see how it works. So multiplied by this minus this. So here it is. So if we go to the what if analysis tool, here is the scenario manager. We can click on the scenario manager. We can create as many scenarios and with the kind of facility that we can have 32 variables. We cannot exceed that. So we add a scenario. I say very good scenario. Very good scenario. So this is my first scenario and I choose the cells. Which cells I have to change? I say I change all 3 cells and then say okay. Very simple. This is easiest to do. Oh, sorry, what happened? Now it asks me put in the figures, values. I say very good scenario. If my sales are 1500, my price is 12, and my cost doesn't really change. And I say add. I add one more scenario. Is worst scenario. Worst scenario. Again changing these 3 cells. And here I put sales only 900, rest remains same, and I do okay. And I say summary, and it tells me which is the result cell. I say the profit is the result cell. Okay, I say okay. Here is my scenario output. It gives me the current values here. It gives me the very good scenario over here. It gives me the worst scenario over here. Mind you that you can actually have, as I said, 32 variables for manipulation. So that is the power of the scenario manager. So I actually showed you 2 things. I showed you data table. I showed you a scenario manager of Excel. We also discussed professional way of actually inputting data into the Excel. So these are the basic 3 tools that you can, 3 techniques to do the sensitivity analysis or scenario analysis. But tomorrow I am planning to help you to understand how we really handle volatile data, uncertain data, and how do we apply simulation with the help of Excel, and probably what are the other tools and what is the difference between these kind of tools. So I hope that you have been able to grasp bits of how to really use Excel at the beginning, and then as you really develop a taste for it, you can use more resources and improve skills on using the same thing.
With this note, we thank you so very much, sir, for giving a sincere effort and making the students learn about data analysis through Excel. And we hope tomorrow also we are going to learn from Dr. Wali more. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us and giving a deep insight into this very topic. Thank you.
Thank you.